Hi everybody, my name is Dr. Hilary Booth and I'm a naturopathic doctor, and welcome to my video blog. Today I'm going to be talking about stress, but not in the way that we typically think of stress. So I spend a lot of time with my patients speaking with them about the things that stress them out in their life. I ask them to rate their stress on a scale of 1 to 10. I ask them what stresses them out and how it affects their bodies in a way of, as a way of getting to know what's going on in their bodies a little bit better. I think of stress typically as something that's quite negative and dangerous, something that increases your risk of heart disease, of the flu, of cancer, obesity, insomnia, and lots of other things. However, I recently read a study that blew my mind. It actually found that the experience of stress itself is relatively harmless. And instead, it's the belief that stress is bad that poses a threat to our health. So let's look at this study. It looked at about 30,000 people for 8 years. And at the beginning of the study, they asked them two very simple questions. First, they asked them, how much stress did you experience over the past year? The second question that they asked them was, do you believe that stress is harmful for your health? And then basically they just monitored these people and looked at whether or not they died over the next 8-year period. I know it's a little bit morbid, but the fact that this study is so simple is what makes it so interesting. So the results showed that people who were under a lot of stress and had the belief that stress was harmful to their health had a 43% increased risk of death over the course of the study. To be honest, this didn't really surprise me that much, right? We know that people who are stressed out and who know that stress is bad are probably going to have an increased risk of death. Okay, here's where it gets interesting. People who experienced high levels of stress but did not actually perceive stress as being harmful had the lowest risk of death in the entire study, including those participants who said that they experienced relatively little stress. Now, this means that stress itself might not actually be what is causing harm to us. It actually might just be the belief that stress is bad. So what does our body look like when it's stressed out? Let's try and explain why this research finding might be true. So when we're stressed out, our body is given basically a soup of hormones, and that causes tons of responses. So we often point to cortisol as the major player in this hormone soup, which it definitely has a huge role. But there are lots of other hormones. There's norepinephrine and epinephrine. Epinephrine is known as adrenaline. There's oxytocin, which is known as the love hormone. There's angiotensin and vasopressin, both of which work on the cardiovascular system. And there are lots and lots of other hormones too, and they all work together in this soup to change the way our body is functioning, to make us breathe more rapidly, to have our hearts beat faster, to sweat, and to redirect our blood flow from our extremities into our internal organs and our muscles. And we also get a burst of energy. This is known as our fight or flight response, and lots of you, I'm sure, have experienced this before. When we're faced with something stressful, our body goes into this phase of fight or flight, so it's allowing us to respond. Now, research shows that all we need to do is reframe how we think about this fight or flight response. So instead of thinking about it being a negative thing, we start thinking about it as a positive thing. For example, we can think about the fact that we are breathing really rapidly as a way of getting oxygen to the brain, where we can think about our hearts pounding as a way of preparing us for action. And we can think about the fact that there's 1,000,000 miles a minute, 1,000,000 thoughts a minute going through your head as a way of actually laying down new foundations and new connections in your brain that are going to improve your memory in the future. So all these things are really interesting. Our bodies are really smart. It's actually responding in a way that's going to help you when you're faced with a stressful situation rather than hinder you. So studies show us that when we believe that a stress response is a good thing, our blood flow actually changes, which is really interesting. So instead of having that blood constriction from the extremities and into the major organs and into the muscles, we actually see that the blood flow remains the same. And this actually starts to mimic what we see as a joy response rather than a stress response. So how interesting is that? That all you have to do is think of stress as a positive thing to make your body think it's experiencing joy. That's kind of cool. This simple change in blood flow that we're experiencing here actually reduces our risk of cardiovascular disease and reduces our anxiety. And studies also show us that when we have a positive outlook on stress, it reduces our overall cortisol levels. Cortisol being that stress hormone we talked about earlier. And cortisol, when it's a little bit lower, can help us with improving our blood sugar regulation, which can help with preventing weight gain and improving our immune system responses and improving our sleep. So all this from simply changing our perspective about stress. So does this mean that we should be running around trying to find stressful situations in order to be happier and more healthy? No, absolutely not. You should still be trying to avoid stress as much as possible in your life and trying to diffuse and reduce stressful situations. But this is good news for those of us who do experience stressful situations in our lives. And I believe that's probably most of us, that stress is somewhat unavoidable. Now, basically, what we need to be doing is thinking about stress as a good thing. Trust that your body's response is for your benefit and not working against you. Remember that breathing more rapidly helps to get more oxygen to your brain, and think of that as a good thing. So the next time that you are faced with a stressful situation and you start to notice that fight or flight response, what you need to do is take a deep breath, smile, and think, wow, my body is doing an awesome job of responding to this stressful situation, and I am going to be able to handle anything that comes my way. So my takeaway message is this: change your belief about stress because it might actually save your life. And thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you have any questions or comments about this at all, please feel free to send me a message or to book an appointment with me by going to www.drshaunaderoux.com or by calling the number listed below. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great week.